Hi, this gorgeous elm I got from a field about 6 months ago. At the time I made some big cuts, you can see. And now it's early spring, it has rooted again and it is time to clean up. Before I do, I'd like to show you a few pictures of the tree when I just cut it, as well as the serious amount of roots that I've removed. And then I'll show you how I take the next steps going from rough material like this into a bonsai. This tree was dug up from a field grower in late last year. When I got the tree, it was a huge shrub. It was maybe 5 times as big as this. And you can tell here from the big cuts that I have severely reduced the tree when I was repotting it. When I got it from the field, I took a huge amount of roots off. Let me grab the roots. I'll show you what I mean. So these are the roots that I took off when I got the plant first. I've planted them up because elms are known to sprout also from the roots. So far we are now in April. I don't have any buds on these roots, but I'll just leave them sitting under my bench and I'll wait until midsummer to decide whether they're going to live or not. Being the plant person I am, of course, the parts that I cut off were not thrown away. I took cuttings. So late fall I took cuttings of this tree and I basically cut all the branches. I cut them to size, see the picture, and I put them in a bucket of water overnight. What you then get is you get some sort of a jelly at the bottom of each cut, and once you have that jelly, elm will root much better. After that I put them in a big container. I put the container in this greenhouse and I've just let it sit there for the rest of winter. In fact, it is still sitting there. And let me see whether I can do this. There we are, in the white container, waiting for spring to come. This sort of work is typical work for a tree that was just dug up. You just need to go through the whole tree, clean out all the dead ends, prune back to 1 or 2 of the little buds, remove side branches that you don't really need, and with that you set the tree up for the growing season. We can tell from the color of the branch, this part of the branch here, this is brownish, whereas here from the buds and back towards the trunk it's more green and glossy. You might be able to see the bark is slightly broken here. This part of the branch is dead. Because I removed so many roots in the potting up process, younger finer twigs have died off over winter, which is not a big problem in itself because it now sprouts here and we create natural taper in the branch. But what I'm going to have to do throughout the tree, go through and remove all the dead branches. This branch shows a nice natural shape. You can see there's a little bit of movement in the main branch and it goes from quite thick at the base to ever thinner with on the outer curves of the little bends side branches which also start a little bit thicker than they are at the end, and this is what we aim for in the typical branch profile. So this is a perfect start of a side branch at this level. You can also see it comes out at a perfect position here. One of the things that I'll need to discuss and think about later on, there is actually a three-way junction. So you can see the trunk is slightly thicker at this spot than it is here. Eventually, either this one or that one will have to go to reduce the swelling or at least stop the incremental swelling at this joint. But that's not for now. Right now my focus is on creating new roots, making sure we get nice fine branching all along the trunk and on the old branches and getting it all settled in. And as said, later in the season I'll deal with the bigger cuts and then I might also decide what I'm going to do with these. When you're pruning out a tree, you quite often find spots like this. There were 2 branches here originally, both of them coming pretty much from the same spot. And you can't have 2 branches in the same spot. They will just cause an ugly swelling. Choice is then which one to remove. I know that eventually I'm going to carve down the whole top section here, but for now either one will need to go. If you look at the trunk line, it seems to make a bit of a bend that direction. So this one is in a nice position to grow out which is parallel with the rest of the tree, whereas this seems to sit more in the elbow. So I'm going to remove the one in the elbow and leave the other one, which then has space to grow out. If you look at a branch like this, it is quite long, it's quite straight, there's no taper in it, but it does have a lot of buds along the whole trunk or along the whole branch. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to look at the profile of the tree. This one is a lot shorter and therefore I can remove this one as well. We don't really need that length. This way I create more taper in the branches. The same here. These are all not final cuts, but they help to set the tone for the final tree. This branch here is completely dead. So it can go, but as I have used a tension wire here to the edge of the plant, to the edge of the pot, I can't remove it flush with the main trunk and it just leaves a little stub. Here, this branch, from here on it's dead. I'm not sure whether it comes out on camera, but you see this is green, there's actually some growth here, and here it goes from green to yellow to brown, and here it is really reddish brown. So I'm going to cut it back to this bud, like that. Unfortunately down below, this branch has also died completely. Here at the base you see the color transition. Fortunately, there's lots of buds lower here, lots of buds here that I can use. This goes. On top, also quite a long branch with little taper, lots of buds. So what you can tell is that when I got the tree, I did some rough cutting already, but I knew that there would be quite a lot of dieback on all of these branches. So at that time, I left stubs. I left longer bits than I want for the tree. So I have more options when there's dieback to cut the tree out and make it clean. You may notice that I'm now first pruning the tree and only then do I start removing excess buds, just to save myself some work. I know this might look drastic, but pruning at this stage helps you set the tree on track forward, and one of the most important characteristics of a good bonsai is branches with a lot of taper. So creating taper now helps you later on, because then later on you don't have to cut back on major branch junctions anymore. Now all the cuts are of the same age and they all need to heal, which is also why this year I'm going to let the tree grow wild quite a bit. Once it is growing wild, I'll also deal with the old big cuts. I'll then clean those up, grind them down and make them a little bit shallow. That way the callus or the wound can start closing, and in a few years time you won't see these spots anymore where it was cut. So the main cuts on this tree have been made. Now I just need to go through and remove all these excess buds that are on the trunk. This cluster of young growth is typical for an elm. Once you cut the end of a branch, you'll see that lots and lots of young buds start forming. And what you need to do at this point in time is thin out the clusters of buds, taking away all the branches except for one or two in the position where you need them. Otherwise you get very big lumps, and that's just not pretty in a bonsai. So I need to go through the whole tree and reduce at all the ends the clusters into pairs. As you can tell, this is not just happening at the end of the branch, but also along the branch there is lots and lots of buds that are sprouting. So I need to go through and just gently try to push excess buds off, leaving just one or two in each location. Some people might think it is strange that I'm removing all these buds from the trunk. I've often heard the argument that you lose energy by removing the buds. In a way that's true. The buds signal the roots, hey, I'm growing, there's something happening up here. Please grow as well and send us more nutrients. But what it also does is it creates tiny little knuckles on your trunk. By removing them now, you reduce the knuckle formation and therefore later on your trunk will look better. So there's a bit of a choice to be made, and it's partially personal preference on whether you remove the buds at this stage or you don't. I am in favor of removing the ones that I don't need and letting the other ones develop further. But that is assuming that the tree that you have is of good health, or at least was of good health when you got it. As said, this came from a field grower. Therefore it has been prepared to be transplanted. The roots have been cut a couple of times during its life. And the trauma on the roots was severe, but there were lots and lots of side roots. And that is now what's powering the growth higher up on the trunk. All done. I guess this is it for now. My elm has been pruned. It is ready for the growing season. And in the next video I'll show you how I work on the big cuts and the choices that I make in the canopy. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Keep growing bonsai.